Jasmine Crockett never expected the moment that unfolded during her testimony. What began as a routine defense of her position on Texas' newly drawn political maps quickly turned into a revealing exchange, one that showcased not only the weaknesses in her argument, but also the sharp precision of the lawmaker questioning her. During a Texas House hearing on the state's controversial redistricting plan, Crockett attempted to explain her concerns about what she described as two newly created Anglo seats. Her goal was to argue that these districts would inevitably lead to more white representation in Congress. But the person sitting across from her wasn't just any committee member. It was Katrina Pierson, former national spokeswoman for Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, a seasoned strategist known for dissecting talking points with ease. Pierson started with a simple question: who currently occupies the two districts Crockett had labeled Anglo? Crockett answered matter-of-factly. One was represented by Lloyd Doggett, a white Democrat, the other by Wesley Hunt, a black Republican. Pierson repeated it back to her, emphasizing the contrast. The Democrat-leaning district elected a white representative, while the Republican-leaning district elected a black one. In one stroke, Pierson dismantled Crockett's assumption that district demographics alone determine racial representation. The exchange caught Crockett off guard, and her explanation shifted. She argued that redistricting isn't about who ultimately wins a seat. It's about who gets the power to choose the winner. To her, Anglo districts meant voter bases where white voters held majority control, regardless of the race of the candidate. Crockett insisted that her concern wasn't about the ethnicity of elected officials, but about maintaining the ability of minority communities to influence election outcomes. She pointed to examples such as Memphis' historically black congressional district, where voters eventually elected a white representative, to prove that people don't always vote along racial lines, but the structure of the district still matters. Yet Pierson countered with another point that left Crockett struggling to maintain footing. If representation truly isn't about the race of the candidate, then why frame these new districts as inherently problematic? And if voters in majority-minority districts have shown they don't always choose candidates of their own race, why assume new Anglo districts would behave differently? The moment revealed a deeper tension, one not just about maps or demographics, but about how political narratives are framed. And just when you think this exchange couldn't get any more complicated, wait until you hear how both sides interpret the Voting Rights Act. As the hearing continued, the conversation shifted from the surface level back and forth to the deeper legal foundations behind redistricting. Specifically the Voting Rights Act, a law designed to protect minority communities from having their political influence weakened. Crockett leaned heavily on this argument, insisting that districts like hers exist not to guarantee a black representative, but to ensure African American voters have a meaningful say in choosing who represents them. She emphasized that her district, while historically a black opportunity seat, has never required voters to elect a black candidate. Instead, she argued, the purpose is to protect the choice of communities who have historically had their voting power diluted. To illustrate her point, she referenced Memphis, Tennessee, another majority black district that eventually elected a white congressman after decades of representation by black members of the Ford family. In her view, that example supported her claim. Opportunity districts empower minority voters, but don't predetermine outcomes. Pierson, however, challenged the logic head-on. Over the past week of testimony, she said, countless witnesses expressed concerns about racial bias, often suggesting that voters prefer candidates who look like them. Yet the very examples Crockett used contradicted that claim. Pierson pointed out something rarely acknowledged aloud. Minority Republicans exist, and Texas itself is home to both black and Hispanic Republicans currently serving in majority-minority regions. If race alone dictated outcomes, these cases wouldn't exist. Then came the data, the part that made Crockett's argument wobble. Across the U.S. House of Representatives, people of color now hold nearly 1/3 of all seats. And about 70% of those lawmakers come from districts intentionally drawn to be majority-minority. At first glance, that might seem like a sign of progress. But Pierson raised a critical question. If minority influence flourishes only when voters are heavily concentrated into specific districts, aren't we unintentionally creating a modern form of political segregation? Packing minority voters into a single district increases their influence there, but it simultaneously weakens their presence in surrounding areas. A district may cross the 50% threshold necessary to qualify as a majority-minority seat, but the neighboring district, now left with only 20% minority representation, effectively loses diverse political voices. In other words, the very system designed to empower minority communities may also be limiting their broader electoral reach. But the real tension was still building. Crockett believed the new Texas map siphoned minority population growth into districts that wouldn't reflect their interests. Pierson argued the opposite, that voting trends, not race, shaped the new boundaries. And when the discussion moved to hard numbers, especially the 2024 voting shifts, the debate took an unexpected turn.